I absolutely love For Honor, and I'm glad that it's still going pretty strong after almost 10 years. But it drives me completely insane that Ubisoft created one of the most unique and engaging combat systems ever, and have only used it in one game in all that time. They've turned the Assassin's Creed franchise into an RPG and kind of replicated a Souls-ish style of combat. You know, they moved away from the sort of action-adventure orientated combat of the original games, and when they went to the RPG games, they went to like a hitbox-based system. And I don't really get why, because they're sitting on one of the best combat systems ever. I'm not saying the combat in the new Assassin's Creed games is bad, and it's definitely gotten better with each iteration, going from, you know, Origins to Odyssey to Valhalla to Shadows. Each time it has got better. Combat kind of took a little bit of a dip in Mirage, in my opinion, but it definitely came back really strong in Shadows. But the combat system in Assassin's Creed currently isn't unique. You know, it's nothing special. It's fine, but it's nothing special. For Honor's combat is special. And a single player RPG, whether that be Assassin's Creed or something else, with that system, I think would work. I mean, taking Assassin's Creed for an example, in For Honor, it's got a high skill ceiling, so it is difficult to fight multiple opponents at once, especially without the revenge mechanic. So it has a mechanic where if you're fighting multiple people online, then you basically fill up this revenge meter, which makes you overpowered for like a short amount of time. Now, in the footage I've put together of me fighting a few bots, I disabled the revenge mechanic, and even against relatively low tier bots, it's difficult to fight without that system in place. But I think for Assassin's Creed, that's actually a really good thing, because not only would the combat be insanely cinematic and just really engaging, it makes sense for an assassin. Why would an assassin want to go up in a head-to-head fight against like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, in the early Assassin's Creed games especially, it was absurd. You could fight like 30 people on your own. But that's not really the way an assassin should operate, and that's not really the intention of the creators of the first game. I remember like Jade Raymond doing interviews saying that Altair wouldn't be able to fight more than one or two guards without, you know, really having to think about that decision and whether to run away. Obviously, in the final game, due to the way they ended up making the combat system, it was kind of easy to cheese it and just do counters, and you could take on, you know, hundreds of guards. And in the newer Assassin's Creed games, they have improved on that a lot. Like, it is more difficult to fight multiple opponents in, like, Shadows, for example. But For Honor nails that balance perfectly. Like, playing as an assassin and taking on 2, 3, or 4 people would be difficult, and you'd have to decide whether you want to resort to stealth or run away and then, you know, try again. But when you do get into a fight, it looks incredible because the animation quality of all the different move sets and weapon sets is just insane. Obviously, For Honor has characters. It doesn't have like weapons. It has characters who have different move sets. But if you were to transfer that system into, say, Assassin's Creed, for example, you would take those character move sets and make them obviously weapon types. So the katana would be the Orochi playstyle, the spear would be, you know, Valkyrie, and so on. And when I've talked about this before, like when I've posted it on Reddit, for example, a lot of the comments I always get are, well, For Honor's a multiplayer game, so it wouldn't work very well for a single player game. And I think people just tend to forget that the game has bots that are actually pretty competent, especially on the higher tier difficulties. And it has a story, it has a campaign with AI and boss battles. And that's another thing, the boss battles would be insane because you have this very in-depth one-on-one fighting system where you can fight in different directions and you have to like parry and counter and dodge. And I think the fact that For Honor has a campaign and has combat against AI, like the footage I've recorded, proves that it could work, especially if the whole game is centered around balancing for fighting against AI rather than multiplayer. Another thing I did is take some screenshots in Assassin's Creed Shadows photo mode and edited them to show the For Honor directional combat system, like overlaid on top of it to show how it could work, and it just fits. You can feel how that would work if you've played For Honor and you played Assassin's Creed, and you can understand how this would fit together and that it would work. The whole thing with the Art of Battle system, which is For Honor's fighting system, is it reminds me so much of the Nemesis system from Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor by Monolith, which is a great system that's been patented by the company that owns it and then just underutilized. And again, For Honor is amazing. I love that game, and I will love it until the day that it ends. I'm not looking forward to that day, and I hope they do something with it in the future. I hope we get a sequel or a spiritual successor, hopefully a Star Wars game. That would be really cool. But it does just feel like keeping it just locked into this one game for a decade is kind of a waste. In fact, not even just a waste, it's actually quite strange because Ubisoft is usually quite happy to reuse things that have worked well across different franchises. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. As long as something isn't overused, like it was getting to that point with the radio tower system from like Far Cry and the towers in Assassin's Creed. It felt like every Ubisoft game had towers at one point. Obviously, things like that, it gets a bit ridiculous. But this is a unique mechanic, like a really in-depth special mechanic, and hopefully we see it in some other games in the future, because For Honor's kind of getting old now, and it would just be a shame to let this system die. Anyway, rant over. Have a great day wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one.